A good bulk of NFL free agency is in the books, and I thought today was a nice opportunity to do my first NFL mock draft of the season. I'm here with one of my good friends, Stone of Stonehard Sports. How we doing?
What's up, guys? I'm doing good. I'm ready to get this mock draft started. I'm very excited.
Before we hop into things, there's two simple rules. I'm going to be doing all the odd selections. Stone is going to be doing all the even selections, and we're each offered one trade that we can do. So one trade for each of us. We don't have to use it, but we definitely have the opportunity to do so. But I'm going to start us off with the first overall pick of the Chicago Bears, and it's going to be Caleb Williams out of USC. I have not thought twice about this pick the entire offseason, and there's been a lot of people that have talked about, hey, maybe the Bears will keep Fields, maybe they could take Drake May, or I don't know. There's been a lot of smoke of different opinions, but it's always been Caleb Williams for me. I don't think the Bears have had any doubts or other reservations about their selection either. Caleb Williams, easy first overall pick.
Yes, I totally agree. I apologize if you're watching this video and you think Justin Fields should stay there, they should trade it. No, you're wrong, incorrect. Just not the correct pick. And with the second pick, one that maybe some people disagree with, I am still on this train. I think a good amount of people are as well, and I think this is what Washington will do. They're going to stay and take another UNC quarterback, that being Drake May. However, this one is very different from the last two or three that have come out. This is not Mitch Trubisky. This is not Sam Howell. This is a franchise-altering quarterback, one that you absolutely need to take at number 2. He had phenomenal production for 2 years in a row. I think people need to realize that consistent production also does matter. And sometimes guys have one-year wonders. Sometimes it works, like Joe Burrow. Sometimes it doesn't. And I think with May having very good success, personally, obviously the team was not great, but I think people need to understand the team around him was very bad. Very, very bad. This UNC team last year would probably have 4 wins, maybe 3, if it were not for Drake May. Not great, just offensive line play, receivers. The one receiver he has that is going into this draft, Tez Walker, was horrendous at the Senior Bowl. I don't think will do very well. This is the right pick, and hopefully he has a better situation with Washington, who just spend a lot of money in free agency, gets their new franchise quarterback.
I like it. And for the Patriots, I'm going to go with another quarterback in Jaden Daniels out of LSU, who you just mentioned was a pretty hot topic to maybe go number 2 with Washington bringing in Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe the fit there is a little bit better than May, but I still think I like May number 2 to Washington as well. And the Patriots, I don't think Daniels he kind of fits what the Patriots typically do. I mean, if you look at their history of just Brady, Mac Jones, I mean, even Drew Bledsoe, I mean, they don't really go after these kind of super athletic quarterbacks that aren't, sitting in the pocket and dissecting defenses. So I think Jaden Daniels is a little bit of a different fit here, but the Patriots, they just need a new fresh start, a new fresh quarterback. And Jaden Daniels is by far the most talented and best on the board with the 3rd overall pick. I don't see them reaching for McCarthy or Nix. Daniels, what he did at LSU last year, winning the Heisman, and just all of his numbers, I think he's the selection for the Patriots. They're going to get their franchise guy and not settle on a veteran this offseason like Jacoby Brissett, who they did sign to be their long-term answer.
Shout out Jacoby Brissett, Wolfpack. He actually, I think, is a pretty good quarterback. He obviously doesn't get starting jobs because he is not, of the caliber of other people, but I think he's serviceable. But I do agree. I do think this should be Jaden Daniels. Reason he is at 3, which you need to, value this stuff when you go quarterbacks. He's had 1 year of success with 2 guys. You see one right here on the board that are going to be first-round picks at receiver, as well as his play style. As Mathis said, it's not typically what Patriots do, but even then, it's still very loose. And sometimes that looseness could create some injuries. He took a lot of hits, was not doing a very good job of keeping himself safe, and he's a slender build. He's not Lamar Jackson. Some people think he's slender. Jaden Daniels is even more, thinner. So that could create some worry, but had by far the best season last year of any quarterback. So Patriots would be pretty happy there. And then at number 4, the Arizona Cardinals just recently lost Marquise Brown. Don't have a lot of receiver talent. This is the easiest pick. This has been mocked forever. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. He is the best and the safest, just pure player, let alone receiver in this class. Amazing build. Super polished with his just ability to get both feet in bounds all the time. Had amazing catches in contested situations. Very solid, just refined route runner. Had a few drops, so maybe, I don't know if you remember, but when Ja'Marr Chase was coming out, people were freaking out because he had a little bit of drops early in his career. I'd say that pick worked out pretty well. And don't freak out if Marvin has some sort of drops earlier in his career, because he'll get it together, and this will be their next version of Larry Fitzgerald.
Yep, very easy layup pick. Harrison to the Cardinals, very easy. Number 5 for the Chargers is where I'm going to do my first and only trade of this mock draft. I'm going to have the Minnesota Vikings move up with the Chargers. And this is a very fascinating situation because the Vikings just traded with the Texans earlier of the day. I'm recording this video, and they picked up an extra first-round pick in this draft. And I think the thought process there is you're going to move up, hopefully jump the Giants, who've had some smoke and speculation to take J.J. McCarthy. They're going to do that themselves. The pick 11 and 23 will go to Los Angeles for the 5th selection. I think the Chargers will also have to probably give back maybe like a 3rd rounder in 2025, but we're just going to have this trade go through, and the Minnesota Vikings are number 5 all the way up, and they're going to select their quarterback of the future. The 4th one off the board in J.J. McCarthy from Michigan.
Controversial, but again, this is what we think is going to happen. I do agree. There is a lot of smoke with the Giants, but this is also a pick to get ahead of the 3 teams behind them that could also look to trade up. If he, potentially doesn't go here, maybe goes a pick later. Obviously, the Giants are there, but the Raiders and the Broncos also might be interested in trading up. JJ, very controversial just prospect, and he's probably one of the hardest prospects to really get a full opinion on in this draft at quarterback. He's had very limited experience. He's extremely young. His build is okay. He's taller, but he's a little bit thinner, similar to Jaden. But he had the best guys around him all the time. And I think, he obviously has intangibles. People seem to love his work ethic from interviews that have been going on. But I think the biggest thing is he's ran an NFL-style offense before with, obviously, Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. So I think with him already having a head start of understanding a lot of NFL concepts, it would be not necessarily the worst pick in the world. I don't think he's valued this high, and I know Mathis does not either. But quarterbacks are valuable. This is what happens. And I think, if I'm the Vikings, I'm not starting him immediately. He definitely needs to be sitting behind now quarterback Sam Darnold, who they paid $10 million a year to, which you don't pay $10 million a year for a backup. So expect Sam Darnold, if this does happen, to be the starter, and J.J. McCarthy maybe after a year to eventually take over for Minnesota. Like the trade up. Now with number 6, Giants upset they couldn't get a quarterback, but it's okay. If Daniel Jones is really that horrendous, they'll get one next year. They'll have a higher pick. So let's go ahead and get the next best receiver who can rival Marvin Harrison. This is an extremely talented receiver class, and that is Malik Neighbors. Just a pure playmaker, almost similar to, not the same exact player, but an Odell type of just, hey, please save us. We'll give you the ball. Go get us a first down. Go get us a touchdown. Make a play. That's Malik Neighbors, and that's something the Giants desperately need in their offense.
Yeah, I think the Giants desperately need some weaponry. They might have the worst collection of it in the NFL. I mean, even Darren Waller, who supposed to be their best guy, he might even retire, still unknown about his future. So the Giants desperately need some help, losing Saquon as well. So I think Malik Neighbors is a good fit there to be kind of like their next Odell Beckham Jr. type of prototype of player. I think that'll be pretty exciting to have him in New York. But number 7 for the Titans, I think we're going to see our first tackle off the board, and that is going to be Joe Alt from Notre Dame. But this offseason, the Titans have really just wanted to surround Will Levis, their young quarterback. I think we're going to see that trend continue in the draft. I'm getting Tony Pollard, getting Calvin Ridley. Now, the draft, they're going to get the best tackle off the board. Joe Alt, going to be a all-pro type of player from day one. I think he's the layup selection here, number 7.
Yep. Franchise left tackle, pretty easy pick for Tennessee, building their O-line and having some pretty interesting free agency moves that might help out their maybe future franchise quarterback, Will Levis, like the pick. At 8, the Atlanta Falcons flirted with some quarterbacks, maybe Justin Fields. They said no. They went and paid Kirk Cousins. A little bit too much money, but I do like Kirk. I think he is a very good quarterback and is definitely good enough to win that division and potentially, obviously, maybe win some games in the playoffs. But now they're going to be looking at defense. They've spent a first-round pick on offense, the past 4 or 5 years. Let's build up that defense a little bit. And the safest defensive player, I think, in this draft that's not a secondary player is Dallas Turner. Not necessarily your Myles Garrett type, but very consistent. Almost look at him like the production Will Anderson Jr. gave the Texans. Very good immediately, and I think is just going to have a very consistent career. Not the craziest athlete, not the most insane production, but is going to be a very good Pro Bowl caliber NFL starter for a long time.
I agree. I think that really became a pretty obvious pick after the Falcons and free agency got their quarterback. I think now they can really focus on helping out Raheem Morris on the defensive side of the ball. Now the Bears with the 9th overall pick, they're second of the top 10. They've got Caleb Williams. They've done a lot in free agency, similarly to the Titans, and just getting a lot of weaponry for their young guy coming in. DeAndre Swift trading for Keenan Allen. I think here is going to be an interesting spot because I do like Rome Odunze. I do like Brock Bowers. Another weapon, it could be the route that the Bears decide to go. But there has been a lot of smoke surrounding Talise Fuaga for the Bears. They've sent some scouts to his pro day, and I think he's ultimately going to be the selection here. He can play either guard or tackle. I know the Bears have 2 pretty good tackles that started last season. Darnell Wright, he was a really nice pick in the first round, their pick from a year ago. But I do think Fuaga could step in a right guard and be a really good player and continue to build up the supporting cast for Caleb.
I absolutely love Talise Fuaga in this draft. I think he rivals Joe Alt for being the best tackle. He has insane size. His production was phenomenal. Super smart at picking up blitzes, but still has very quick feet. We'll see, obviously, where the Bears move him if this is their pick. I think the Bears are one of the hardest picks, at least with their 9th spot, as they obviously just recently traded for Keenan Allen, so they got some great weapons over there. But I don't think they would take a weapon at 9, so I agree. So this is a very possible pick, and I'm sure they're going to be very happy. And the team that I'm picking for is going to be very upset because the Jets would have loved to add Talise Fuaga to their offensive line because their number one need is to protect their quarterback that they just paid a ton of money for. And I think you're going to want Aaron Rodgers to play more than half of a drive next season. So let's go ahead and get the next best tackle on the board, the most experienced tackle that's left, but still very first round caliber and phenomenal pass blocker. And that is Troy Fautanu out of Washington. Phenomenal job protecting Michael Penix this year. Really made him stay out of pressure a lot. Obviously, when they got to the title game, there was a little bit of more pressure that came, but that wasn't necessarily all on him. Still did a very good job. He's more specialized in pass blocking. Run blocking could still use a little bit, but I think they could still run on to the other side of the field. And Breece Hall, I think, is a top 5 talented back in the NFL, so shouldn't be too much issue there. But let's go ahead and make sure Aaron Rodgers doesn't play only a few plays in 2024.
I do like the selection. The Jets have 2 okay tackles, but they're not super reliable. I mean, they traded for Morgan Moses, but he's getting up there in age. He's not quite the same player that he was. Even Fatuanu, people have talked about him being a potential guard. He might be better suited there, so I think he's versatile enough to play either. So I do like that pick for the Jets, just getting another really nice chess piece for their line. Now here, number 11, the Chargers. They have a ton of different ways they can go about using this pick. Because they did pick up the 23 pick from the Vikings in that trade, they could just go BPA here. But I do think Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers ends up being the selection. But Odunze, since they did trade away Keenan Allen, they cut Mike Williams, and they did sign Will Dissly in free agency. I think Odunze, you could argue him and Bowers is, who's the better player. But I do think just because of the glaring hole now at wide receiver, that Odunze gets the slight edge here, and I think he's going to be my pick. The Chargers do not get Malik Neighbors, who I've seen all across social media. That's who Charger fans really, really want. But they do get, I still think a really, really nice player in Odunze here. And we have back-to-back Washington Huskies here going number 10 and 11.
Yes, definitely, I would say the best player on the board right now. Chargers fans, you should not be worried. This guy also rivals Malik Neighbors. Don't think it's another tier gap. He is absolutely right there with him. Just a different style of player. This is your Keenan Allen 2.0 replacement. Big athletic wideout with exceptional hands. Not the fastest guy in the world, but neither was Keenan Allen. He's actually even faster than Keenan was in his prime. So I think this would be a great pick for them. Then at number 12, the Denver Broncos paid a ton of money to get Russell Wilson out of their building. They did not want him anywhere near there anymore. And Sean Payton is trying to move on with his new regime in Denver. Made a lot of interesting moves. Clearly they're trying to go up, but we're not necessarily thinking they're wanting to fully tank, but I don't know if they're at the same level as other teams. So one position that is very glaring that they don't have is quarterback. Jarrett Stidham is currently on the roster. I don't think he's starting 16 or 17, 18 games in the season. And there is quarterbacks that are first round caliber left on the board. Again, are they the 12th best, 13th best players in this class? No, but it's a very valuable position. And a quarterback that comes to mind that I think I could just see being with Sean Payton is Oregon's Bo Nix. He reminds me, this is not an exact comp, but the style play of like a lesser Drew Brees combined with the just build of Brock Purdy. This is a guy who was extremely efficient, close, shorter, down the field. His average depth of target, I believe, was one of the lowest in college football, but he was insanely efficient. He rivaled Jaden Daniels as the best season last year for a quarterback. Now, obviously, they had a lot of pieces around him, but this wasn't insane receiving core that he had. He had to make a lot of on-time, on-target throws that are short route. He could still relatively get it down there, but he doesn't have the biggest arm. But where he differs is his athleticism. He is sneaky athletic, almost Purdy. Some people don't really realize Purdy has some sneaky athleticism that he was able to show off in multiple playoff wins this year. And maybe, while we don't think Purdy is necessarily an MVP caliber player, he is still clearly a good quarterback and definitely someone that, obviously, like we saw, you could go to a Super Bowl with. And in my opinion, if you make it to the Super Bowl, you got a chance to win it because you're in the game. So I think with the Broncos not having a quarterback right now, go ahead and get Brock Purdy, or go ahead and get Bo Nix, a quarterback that Sean Payton has relatively worked with before, just in this new form. Even though he is older, this is probably where Denver is leading at 12.
Yeah, I think Denver definitely needs a quarterback. I don't see how you could ride into a season with Jarrett Stidham and play all 17 games unless they're trying to get one of those top picks next year. I mean, he's just a career backup, kind of a journeyman who's been on multiple teams now. I don't see how he can be the starter for them from day one. So I think Bo Nix there fits definitely. And then 13, the Raiders, they would maybe be a little bit upset about that. Maybe they would want Nix to come down to Las Vegas. But the Raiders have had an interesting offseason, spending a lot of money on some high-priced players, Christian Wilkins being the biggest one that they signed from the Dolphins. But at quarterback, they also brought in Gardner Minshew on a fairly decently sized contract. And I think that they're going to try and ride out the season with him and Aiden O'Connell, maybe have a quarterback competition and see who's the best to lead their team this year. I think they might punt on a quarterback until maybe later in the draft, or maybe even until 2025, just kind of depending on how the board falls. So I think for the Raiders, I'm going to go somewhere on defense. And I think Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo has been one of the highest risers due to the combine, had a great athletic testing, and the Raiders still need help on the back end of their defense. Their defensive line will be really, really good this year. Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, who they drafted last year. I kind of like that unit, but in terms of the secondary, they still need somebody. Quinyon Mitchell, one of the biggest risers. He's going to go to Las Vegas with the 13th pick.
Quinyon Mitchell is my favorite corner, probably top 3 favorite player in this class. This is a guaranteed phenomenal pick. He will come in and not maybe be Sauce Gardner, but he is going to be damn near close to it. And this is a guy that is just going to step in. He has the production, the athleticism, but the Raiders are ecstatic that they can get this guy at 13. And then with 14, we have the Saints, who are in a very weird position. They brought back a lot of their players, re-signing Tyrann Mathieu, re-signing Demario Davis. They have a ton of cap hits. They're in a weird spot. They're an older team. We're not really sure exactly what direction they're going in, but at least when you look at their team needs right now, offensive line and defensive line is getting old. We have Cameron Jordan, who has obviously been phenomenal, but he might just dip and go to Fox and be an analyst next year. And their offensive line, Ryan Ramczyk, has been flirting with retiring, and their first-round pick 2 years ago, Trevor Penning, has not been phenomenal. But with what's on the board right now, Trevor Penning, in terms of tackle, you could potentially give 1 more year, and Ramczyk has committed to playing this year. So if you're a team that's not trying to lose right now, maybe you could fill in the spot that you might already need help in anyways, because no one is really opposite of Cameron Jordan. So we're going to go with the next best edge on the board, and that is Jared Verse. Relatively similar to Dallas Turner, just had a little bit less production overall, which is why he's going a little bit lower. But I think this would be a solid pick for the Saints trying to find their next replacement for Cam Jordan.
Makes sense to me. I really do like Jared Verse as a player as well. And now here with the Colts at number 15, I'm going to go with another cornerback. Similarly to the Raiders, the Colts have some nice pieces on their defensive line. You go to the back end and there's a lot of holes. They brought back Kenny Moore, but he's more of a nickel corner. I think they need somebody that could be on the boundary a little bit. I'm going to take Nate Wiggins here. He had probably one of the best combines for any player. I mean, he ran a sub 4.340, which that's going to shoot you up draft boards. And I think he fits in nicely with Indianapolis. I mean, I have seen some mocks have Arnold go there, maybe Cooper DeJean. But I think Nate Wiggins, just because of his athletic profile and really just his size to be a top-end corner, I think he's going to get the nod here with the 15th pick, and the Colts bring home some help for their secondary.
This is totally a Colts pick. They love their big athletes, probably one of the best, if not the best cornerback athlete in this class. Now, do I think he's the second best corner? Do we think he's the second best corner? Maybe not. I also want to throw in there were apparently some rumors about Nate Wiggins not having amazing interviews at the Combine. So maybe Chris Ballard does not care who is the Colts GM and just wants to get their guys. Totally possible, but maybe something to watch for in the future as his career plays out. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go to the Seahawks at 16. Another interesting spot. Have their quarterback of the future, Geno. We talked about maybe they could be a team. Hey, do they want to go ahead and get the replacement for Geno Smith? We're not going to go ahead and do that at 16, but it could happen. Just drafted a phenomenal corner last year. Their past 3 drafts have been very good, but they did lose a lot of offensive line play. And I think between the guys that are still available on the board, we are going to go ahead and go with one that could potentially, I think he's going to stay at this tackle spot, but slightly could move inside, but I think would be a very good tackle, and one that is not only good in pass pro, but also good in run protection. And as a new Seattle regime comes in, I think they're definitely going to want to use Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. Phenomenal running back. I think he's very good and underrated. Might as well get some help so he can go out there and potentially run for top 3 yards in the league. Very possible with Mike McDonald there. So let's go ahead and get J.C. Latham out of Alabama.
Always nice building the trenches, and McDonald, who's coming from that Harbaugh tree, I think he will want to bring that physical brand of football. But I do like that selection. And then the Jags here at number 17. I'm going to go with another corner. My 3rd straight corner pick. But at the Jags, they lost Rayshawn Jenkins. They also lost Darius Williams. 2 key pieces of their secondary veteran players. And I think they're going to need to replace them. And Terrion Arnold. He has been somebody mocked to the Jags a lot. And I see him being the fit here. He's a plug-and-play player. It's kind of crazy because Kool-Aid McKinstry, he was seen as maybe a top 10 pick just a year ago. And then now he's not even the top corner on his own team coming out in this draft. Terrion Arnold to the Jaguars. They get much needed help in the secondary. I think he's going to step in right away. Be nice pairing with Tyson Campbell.
Yes, back-to-back Bama players. Terrion Arnold is essentially what we thought Kool-Aid would be this upcoming season. He, in terms of similarities to Quinion Mitchell, I think he rivals as the second best corner in the draft. It's just, I think Mitchell separated himself with the combine, is just a little bit more athletic. But I think the Jags would absolutely love if he's still available at 17. Then we got 18, and this one, I know that we're looking at the top of the board, and we see a name that looks very enticing, and I want to click draft so bad because I could totally see them going this route and grabbing Brock Bowers. But I think after last season, having gone through a year where your quarterback was not playing half the year, and when he started, he was not as good, but that's because he was injured from previous seasons. So he's now finally fully healthy, and you got Jamar Chase. I know there's some T. Higgins rumors. He could be traded. Could this be a receiver? Absolutely. If that is the case, it would probably be Brian Thomas Jr. if they get rid of T. Higgins. But I think the smart pick could be Brock Bowers as well. He's just a pure weapon. Smart pick, though. Just get the best O-line there. Please, please, please protect Joe Burrow. He's a very good pass protector. Super huge athlete. Is a little bit raw, but I think they need to do it anyways. Olu Fashanu from Penn State was projected very high coming into the year. Fell off a little bit just because some people thought his run blocking was not as good as it was originally projected. Still a very good pass blocker. That's what the Bengals are going to want to do all the time anyways. Go ahead, please. Make the smart pick.
The Bengals are definitely really fascinating. I mean, they did lose Jonah Williams also in free agency, so they definitely have a need at tackle. You did mention all the Burrow injuries, but they're just kind of a weird run team, and they kind of just value those elite weapons on the outside. So I could see Brock Bowers ending up there, like you mentioned. But I think either way, that's a pretty good pick. I mean, I do like, you also mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. He's very similar to T. Higgins, is just a really big body receiver, but I don't know if a trade will get done since it's a little bit complicated due to the franchise tag and just all the guaranteed money that a team will have to offer him. I like that selection, now number 19 with the Los Angeles Rams. Aaron Donald, he just retired, and I'm going to take that into consideration with my pick. I'm actually going to select Byron Murphy II out of Texas. They had Kobe Turner last year. He was great out of Wake Forest as a rookie, but I think they could have a nice tandem with Murphy coming in, provide another element to that defense. I could see maybe somebody in the secondary here. I like Cooper DeJean. He's a very versatile player. Could he fit in and be maybe like that star role towards their defense? But I think Byron Murphy is the pick that makes the most sense here, and really fills a need now with Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive players ever, retiring.
Yeah, a lot of different directions the Rams could go in, but a brand new hole just opened up right as we were recording this on the day. The greatest, one of, maybe you could say definitely the greatest of our generation in terms of just defensive players in general. Aaron Donald retires. Seemed like it was a little bit interesting because maybe they would have liked this to happen right after the season so that they know all their needs, but it's a brand new need. Open it up, and with Byron Murphy and our mock falling, I think this is a phenomenal pick for them to take him there. Then the Steelers just made a lot of moves. They have a new quarterback in town, Russell Wilson. It's not a bad gamble because you're paying him basically nothing. And they have a few other moves that they made, changed receivers. No longer do they have Deontay Johnson. They picked up Dante Jackson from the Panthers. But Steelers in an interesting spot as well. Clearly still want to try and win. Mike Tomlin's never trying to lose. He's always trying to make the playoffs. And as of right now, looking at their roster, there's linebacker, corner, defensive back. They just addressed two of those in free agency. Patrick Queen, and then, as I said, they just traded for a corner. They literally don't have a center that's capable on roster. So, luckily for them, there's a perfect center right here on the board, and that's Jackson Powers Johnson. This is your prototypical, almost like Creed Humphrey, other centers from the past few years that Tyler Linderbaum, they get picked, they come in, they're immediately Pro Bowlers, and they're starting for years to come. That's Jackson Powers Johnson. He's phenomenal. His arms are a little bit smaller, but that's why he's playing center, because you don't need to stretch out and get the really long and fast pass rushers. You could just stay inside, be super bulk, push the guys back. That's JPJ. Perfect pick for the Steelers.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, JPJ, he was kind of targeted for either the Jaguars, the Steelers, or the Dolphins. The Jags, they signed Mitch Morse. The Dolphins, Aaron Brewer from the Titans. That really just leaves one team that has a huge hole at center, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. But now here with the Dolphins, I still think they could be interested in JPJ if he's on the board. Maybe move him to guard or maybe Brewer to guard and kind of figure that out. But I think the Dolphins are going to have a chance to do something really, really fascinating. So we see here Brock Bowers, who was seen as maybe a top 5 pick for much of the draft process. He's still sitting here at number 21. So I'm not exactly sure if this will be what happens on draft day. I mean, some of these teams could maybe trade up if he falls this far. Maybe a team from 10 to 20 decide, hey, let's just let's screw a need. Let's just go after the best player and take Bowers. But in this instance, I think Brock Bowers could be on the board. And so the Dolphins, they did go out and get Jonnu Smith. They have a couple other okay blocking type of tight ends like Durham Smythe or Julian Hill. But none of those guys are real difference makers. We know Mike McDaniel, he loves to have his weaponry. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane. Could you imagine adding in Brock Bowers to that offense? It would be pretty spectacular to watch. I know the Dolphins have some needs at interior offensive line, maybe another tackle since Teron Armstead's getting up there in age, maybe even Drazon Newton since Christian Wilkins did leave in free agency. There's a lot of different directions that they could go. But I think they might just go BPA. And if Brock Bowers is on the board somehow, he could fit into that offense and provide an entirely new element and really make that, a very hard team and offense to stop. So I'm going to take Brock Bowers here. This would be a pretty crazy pick.
As you said, he could go much higher. Some teams could just be like, let's just get this guy. The Bengals, was very, very close to taking him. But Dolphins, that would be insane to watch. Waddle, Hill, and Bowers all in the same offense, coached by Mike McDaniel. Tua getting them the ball. Maybe that can, if they're all healthy, maybe they could actually come and win a playoff game next year. Then we have the Eagles. Philly made a ton of moves in the offseason. Obviously stole New York Giants' precious running back Saquon Barkley. Made a ton of other moves as well. A lot of them I did like. But now they're looking at the board. Their biggest need, I think, / maybe they could be linebacker. I don't think there's a linebacker worth taking right here. So for the Eagles looking at the board, Cooper DeJean, who has had injury history, has fallen all the way here to 22, is a guy who can play on the interior in the slot and on the outside. Just don't think because he's a white corner he can't play on the outside. That's not true at all. He can totally play on the outside, but very gritty, is super good at tackling. Very, very good tackler. Could play in the slot and on the outside, which is something that's very underrated because the Eagles obviously got burnt in coverage, but if you're running to the outside and your linebackers can't get there, your corner's going to need to make a tackle, and the Eagles couldn't do that last year. So Cooper DeJean, literal chess piece. You can move him everywhere. Eagles probably super excited to get their hands on that.
The Chargers up next with the Vikings selection at number 23. Another fairly interesting team here. We had him taking Rome Odunze with their 11th pick, but I think here it's going to be some player in the trenches. Jim Harbaugh, coming from Michigan, even coached the 49ers back in the day. The philosophy has always been tough nose, physical, run the football, stop the run. He's going to take a tackle or somebody on either side of the ball that can play in the trenches. And I think Latu is somebody there, or Amarius Mims, Graham Barton. One of those players I really do think fits nicely with the Chargers here, in the early of the 20s. You got Khalil Mack, who's getting up there in age. You got Joey Bosa, who's getting up there in age. They're both making a lot of money. They did take pay cuts this year, but they could be playing their last seasons for the team. But I think when I look at the Chargers, Trey Pipkins, he was honestly kind of a surprise for the team last year. He played pretty well at right tackle. And then left tackle, you have Rashawn Slater, who's one of the best up-and-coming guys in the league. I think they might go out and try to get somebody that can play tackle if necessary, but is probably better suited inside, and that's going to be Graham Barton out of Duke. I was thinking about maybe taking the higher end player in Amarius Mims, but Amarius Mims, he's not going to be perfectly ready to go right away. He's kind of a project, didn't have a ton of snaps at Georgia, so maybe he fits the Chargers' timeline because I don't know if the Chargers are going to be super competitive next year with all the moves that they made and just getting rid of players and kind of planning for the future. So maybe that decides to be their pick and they develop him. But I do think Graham Barton is somebody that can step in right away and be a very nice, solid option. And keeping Justin Herbert healthy, who missed a lot of games last year due to his finger issue, I think is a nice selection. And getting him, plug and play, good guard option. I think Graham Barton is a nice pick for the Chargers to pair Rome Odunze.
Yep, like the pick, Graham Barton. It says tackle. He's not going to play tackle. Let me tell you, he's going to be on the inside. And now we're looking at the Cowboys. Did not make a lot of moves in free agency. Probably, they may have lost maybe 4 times, 5 times more people than they brought in or re-signed. So going to be a lot of changing there. When I look at the team and the players on the board, one position group that I think took the biggest hit is O-line. Lost a good amount of people, had a lot of people injured. Tyron Smith, franchise tackles are going to be moving on. And I think the tackle on the board, he is a little bit raw. He's not as raw as other people. If I trust one or two offensive line groups and offensive line coaches for specific teams in the league, it's the Eagles and the Cowboys. They know how to grab and develop offensive linemen, and Amarius Mims, who is a physical freak, but still was relatively decent at Georgia, just did not play a ton of snaps. They are going to go ahead and take him there and try and pick up maybe where Tyron Smith left off as being their franchise tackle.
Yeah, I like that for sure. They are really good at developing linemen. I remember when they took Tyler Smith a couple years ago, people were like, man, who is this guy? Why is he going in the first round? And now he's one of the best guards in the league. So I do think they could go after, again, somebody with a really high ceiling, but has limited experience for Georgia. I think Mims, fits really nicely there. But the Packers here, I think they would be pretty happy with how the board has fallen, because I also think that they could use some offensive line help. Here, Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, he has been somebody who has gone up some draft boards as well. The Packers offensive line, I think, was pretty decent last year considering all the variables. But David Bakhtiari was cut from the team. He will not be back, and who knows where he's going to be even playing next year. He could just retire. He's dealt with a lot of injuries the past several seasons. I know the Packers have Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker as their tackles. I think Rasheed Walker was okay last year as a late round pick. I do think getting just another valuable asset on that offensive line, another tackle that can be really good, is an option that could go in. And I think they're really just wanting to surround Jordan Love with a lot of pieces, going out and getting Josh Jacobs. I think Tyler Guyton is the pick here, number 25, and we have a run on offensive linemen, once again.
Yes, one of the probably slightly riskier picks in the draft. He's very raw, so you're going to have to try and develop him, obviously. And the Packers, a team I would say they're trying to win right now, but did lose a lot of offensive line. And I know we're looking and say, oh, they lost David Bakhtiari. He was amazing. How are they going to fill that role? He really didn't play, and the best ability is availability. So if anything, Guyton coming in might be better than just David Bakhtiari never playing. But they definitely needed at least an upgrade at O-line. So hopefully Guyton can be that for them. And then we're looking at the Bucs, also an interesting team. Surprisingly, won a playoff game. I know I definitely didn't think that they would succeed, at least to the level they did this past year. Re-signed a good amount of people on their team. They want to try and run it back. They did lose one key piece, however, and that's Shaq Barrett rushing the passer. And when you look at their defense, that is one area that they potentially could be lacking. So while it is a little bit of a risky pick, it's one that I absolutely love, and that is Laiatu Latu from UCLA. He could be the steal of this draft if he is going as late as projected. The reason, similar to Dolphins player Jalen Phillips, he had to medically retire from football, but came back to play for UCLA and had one of the most efficient pass rushing seasons in the last few years, and is not going as high, obviously because of the injury concerns. But I think if you're down the board at 26, you just won a playoff game, shockingly. You re-signed all your players. Why not go ahead and take a chance on a position that you definitely need? And if it works out, this could be an absolute home run.
I think here at number 27 for the Cardinals, I think they might go BPA. They just need a lot of talent. That's kind of really what it comes down to with the Cardinals. They're still in year number 2 really of this rebuild. I think Jerzon Newton is the best player on the board here. I don't think they're going to go with another wide receiver because they took Marvin Harrison. I don't even know, has it ever been done before where a team has taken 2 wide receivers in the first round of the draft? But I do think best player on the board, Jerzon Newton, be a nice piece to have to kind of rebuild their defensive line, which desperately needs some help. I like him from Illinois. He's a little bit undersized, but I still think he can be a really nice pass rusher. I mean, I don't want to compare him to like Aaron Donald, but Aaron Donald was an undersized player as well who really just flashed because of how quick he was, his speed. And I think Jerzon Newton has some sense of that in terms of just his quickness off the ball and really what he could be long-term as a pass rusher on the interior. So Jerzon Newton to Arizona.
Yeah, good pass rushing option for them. They signed a lot of defensive linemen, but don't really think any of them are pushing or moving the needle at all. It was more of stopgap position. So if I'm Cardinals, which could be a sneaky trade down spot, but they're going to stay here, get BPA, makes sense. Then the Bills, they are going to, in probably 5 seconds, turn in their card and instantly get Brian Thomas Jr., a receiver that is much higher than the 28th best player in this class, at least in my opinion. Again, because of needs and other stuff, he falls down the board. But Bills just lost Gabe Davis, which I don't think Gabe Davis is really a needle mover, but Brian Thomas is better than and will be better than Gabe Davis. And maybe we could see some rumblings that could happen with Stephon Diggs. He's been rumored in trades. After looking at stuff, they're going to have to eat a lot of cap if they want to get rid of Stephon Diggs. But maybe if that comes in the next year or so, with him being very old, Brian Thomas Jr. could just step right in and fill that position.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The Bills just trying to surround Josh Allen with good weaponry. Last year took Dalton Kincaid. I think they could also go with another receiver here. Diggs, he is getting up there in age a little bit. I do think they could get another wide receiver to kind of replace him down the line and be their true wide receiver one. So I do like Brian Thomas Jr. there. 29 for the Lions. I think they're just going to address their defense. I mean, in free agency, DJ Reader also getting another corner. They're really focusing on that side of the ball. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry here makes sense. I mentioned how he was seen as one of the top players in the draft before the year started. He fall off a little bit, but I still think he has the potential to be a really good player. Kool-Aid did have a Jones fracture that came up around the combine, so maybe that scares off the Lions or some of these teams towards the end of the first round. Just when you take into account the need for that position, they need help in their secondary and on the defensive side of the ball, and also just his talent level. I think he makes sense here with pick number 29. I think it'd be a really nice pick for the Lions.
Yeah, Kool-Aid ranked obviously very high early coming into the year. Only thing is his speed seems to not be ideal to what other teams would like, but with the Lions, they did just recently try and sign a few secondary pieces, and that is the position that they really needed the most. So they'll go ahead and get the next best corner on the board. Then with the Ravens, obviously still an amazing team, brought back a good amount of people, lost a few, but I think they're still looking very good for next season. When I look at their needs and the guys on the board, if you look at receiver, obviously they just took one last year. Zay Flowers was amazing. I loved him coming out, and he did a phenomenal job. But is he really just the only guy you can go into next year with? Mark Andrews you had, but he just got injured last year. And in terms of specific receivers, they just signed Rashad Bateman, but Rashad Bateman's not pushing the needle for me, and I don't think Rashad Bateman is a number 2 receiver. So if you're looking for a potential number 2 receiver, or just good receivers in general, I think the best 2 picks here are either Adonai Mitchell or Ladd McConkey. I did Ladd McConkey in my last mock draft. This one, obviously a dual mock draft. We're going to switch it up, and we're going to go with Adonai Mitchell, super lengthy receiver, bigger than, Zay Flowers, but faster than Rashad Bateman. So he's got Bateman's size and Flowers' speed. I'd say that works pretty well for a receiver prospect. Now they have the 3 pillars of different positional types in terms of their receiving room, and giving Lamar all the options he needs to actually go out there and try and make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I really like that fit there as well, just getting even more weapons for Lamar. I could see something on the offensive line because they do have some question marks there. I mean, they even traded away Morgan Moses, but I do like Mitchell and his fit in Baltimore. The 49ers now with pick number 31, coming off of a Super Bowl loss, they have a fairly interesting selection as well because they could go offensive line. I think that was probably their weaker unit on the team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And also, they're one of their better players, Trent Williams. He's not going to be playing forever. Getting up there in age, I think is 35 or 36. They're going to be needing a replacement for him fairly soon. So I do think that they could go a tackle. Another position they could go is potentially edge rusher because they did lose Chase Young, or at least it seems like they're going to be losing him. They did sign Leonard Floyd to a contract, but I don't know if they really want him to be their full-time starter. I mean, he had a pretty good season for Buffalo last year, but again, he's a little bit up there in age as well. I feel like he'd be better as a rotational pass rusher and not like a full-time snap count kind of player. So for the sake of this mock, I think I'm going to have them take a pretty nice developmental tackle who has some fairly nice upside in Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU. It's going to be a nice developmental piece, maybe learn behind Trent Williams. I think he could potentially start year number 1 for them. But even then, I think when you get to the late in the first round, you're kind of finding guys that have really high talent, really high ceilings, may just need a little bit of time to really come on. And I think Kingsley, he's one of those types of players, and I think he's a nice fit in San Fran. And Kyle Shanahan would love his athletic profile.
Yeah, Suamataia, very, very raw, but a very good pass blocker. Pass blocker is mainly his thing. I think they'd be very good in play action, obviously something that they love to do. Run, pass, option, play action, all that good stuff with Shanahan's offenses. And he can move. He can move around on the O-line in terms of being mobile, not from guard to center, but moving physically as a tackle. They like to use a lot of motion and swing, and that's something he can do. There's a lot of good tackle prospects on the board as we move to the last pick. A lot of good prospects in general. Obviously, so many of them aren't going to be able to go here. With tackle, you got Jordan Morgan, Dominic Puny, Roger Rosengarten are just a few that I love. Receiver, there's so many receivers we could go that are worth the first round. Ladd McConkey, Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Keon Coleman, the fastest receiver ever in the combine, Xavier Worthy. So many different stuff we could do. Or hey, let's go linebacker, Peyton Wilson. Even corner has so much stuff. Edge rusher with Chop Robinson. But we're not going to be doing any of that. Because if you forgot, I still have one more trade left and I haven't used it yet. And when I'm looking at the Chiefs, is this going to happen 100%? Maybe not. We'll see. But there is a team that has a close second round pick to where Kansas City is not moving a ton of picks down the board. There's still, like we just went over, a lot of players that they could use, especially at receiver and tackle, that will probably still be on the board, at least someone they like. So what's going to happen is we're going to have them trade down. Almost in a Lamar Jackson style trade, a team is going to trade up and they're going to try and get potentially their next franchise quarterback. A team that has not taken a quarterback in this draft, has a higher second round pick. Maybe their starting job is open. They signed a quarterback. They have one on roster that they drafted last year, but it was later in the draft, and he's 25 years old. We are going to have the Las Vegas Raiders trade up from 44. They will most likely potentially give up a third round pick or a second round pick next year, and probably maybe pick 148 or something like that. Let's do this trade right here. 44, third round next year, 148, and the Raiders are going to take their next franchise quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. Now, obviously, we have a lot of quarterbacks in the first round, and some of you might saying, well, you know, maybe there won't be this many, or Penix will be too high, or he's going to go much higher than you think, or he's going to go much lower than you think. I've seen opinions all over the place. I think this is a perfect spot in the first round. I think he should be a first round pick. The thing with Penix, he's older. He's had crazy injury history. He had phenomenal receivers around him, one obviously being picked in the first round. So he had a ton around him. It was his first year of really main experience in terms of having success, because he was injured 4 years in a row. But that's why you can go to the Raiders, who just signed Gardner Minshew. They have Aiden O'Connell. None of those are their franchise guy. Maybe he doesn't sit the whole year, but he could sit a good portion of the year. And when they're ready, a Raiders team that I don't think they're looking to be bad anytime soon. They have Devontae Adams. They were not going to trade him. They just spent a ton of money to steal Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins. Still have Max Crosby, a ton of other pieces on their offense. The team is not bad, and I don't think they want to try and bottom out. So they're going to go ahead in this mock and trade up for the final pick and the final quarterback in the mock, Michael Penix Jr.
Wow, I'm pretty shocked, but I really do like the pick of Michael Penix and the fit of him in Las Vegas. Would be interesting, though, if the Chiefs do want to trade that pick to their division rival, who have been talking a lot of trash so far this offseason about, the Mahomes rules and all that. But that could be a fairly interesting selection, just getting Penix right before the second round to ensure that they have the fifth-year option. And that's what a lot of teams like to do towards the end of the first round if you do really like a quarterback that could fall. We saw that last year with Will Levis. The Titans did move up, not into the first round, but fairly close to it. I think we could see something like that again, where Michael Penix does sneak into the back end of the first round. But that doesn't do it for our mock draft, our official first one of the offseason. Probably come back and do maybe one or two more of these before the draft actually starts. Maybe a 2-round mock, so the Panthers can have a selection in the draft. I know Panther fans out there haven't seen one all season with their team in it. So maybe we'll do that for you guys and have a 2-round mock. We'll have to see. But I'm going to leave Stone stuff in the description. He has a lot of other NFL content, a lot of other draft content, so feel free to go check that out. But that's going to do it for this mock draft. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. What is the most surprising pick? Do you agree and think it's maybe Brock Bowers to the Dolphins, or what other pick do you disagree with? Let me know what you guys think. But subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.